demonic angel. Today I'm going to talk about maybe about 35 or 40 horror movies that I can remember that I like. You know, I'll maybe do videos like this once a year. I did books last summer. I did them again now. And, you know, maybe I'll do like a cold satanic music list again. But, you know, I'll just kind of go down the list, and that's about it. I've been watching, scary movies since I was a child. Lots of opinions on it, whatever, but, you know, I watched movies like this with my dad. Not, you know, gory, but, I mean, scary, and 80s and 90s kind of scary. So many of them were cheesy, you know, but, you know, I've always liked just, I mean, on like a couple nights a week, I still do that. I just watch a good movie. And most of them are 80s movies, actually. But, you know, I thought, hey, I'll share my list. Warlock, 1991, that is a really good movie. It's about a couple of warlocks and kind of how they evolve. But it has one really famous actor, and I'm so bad for already forgetting his name, but, you know, you can go check that out. I do recommend that. So then all the George Romero's Night of the Living Dead zombie movies that I think they started in the 70s and it goes through the 80s because it's a whole franchise. But I love it. I love the characters. I mean, it's cheesy, but it's scary, and it's the right amount of cheese and the right amount of scary that really goes together. And it, you know, sits well and your stomach tastes really good. You know, where some movies are, it's just, the horror is like, almost just more like people being rude to each other, and then it's just so, people are being so snarky or something that's cheesy and it just doesn't work out. The Haunting, 1999, that has, oh dang it, what's her name? But it has Owen Wilson in it, and it's just kind of a classic, you know, story where people go and they get trapped in a haunted house, and it's very much like Rose Red, which is another Stephen King thing where when these participants are trapped in the house, it turns out that one of them were in some way related to the people who own the property, and this changes this person. It opens them up to these new experiences, and I mean, ultimately insanity. They can't handle it, you know, and that's the thing about, I mean, I'm really happy I have all these friends to brag about whatever with, you know, because if it's something you feel comfortable with, you understand it, but to just bring people into the possibility of insanity, you know, when becoming a cultist or magician is definitely not for everybody. But, I mean, for some people it is. Identity, now a couple of these I were like, you know what, they really weren't, they're not supernatural, and I was like, whatever, and I just threw them out of my list. This is one because I'm actually rereading Agatha Christie's, it actually used to be called like something, you know, it was like a racial slur, but that's because she lived, I mean, over 100 years ago, and she didn't mean, I mean, she wasn't like that, but they changed the name of the book or something to be Murder is Easy. Something similar is the name of the modern title. For a while it was actually called 10 Little Indians, and that's the name I have on this really old copy from the 60s. But the idea is just that there's these little statues, and everybody's you know, stuck on an island, and as they die mysteriously one by one, the little statues get smashed thrown away, they disappear, whatever, as these people die one by one. So it's kind of, there's a nursery rhyme actually. I'll link that in the description below, just curiosity and such, but it's just like 10 little Indians doing something, and this one, and he chokes or something, and then there were 9. And it's like 9 little Indians, and it, you know, it's real, it rhymes, it's a nursery rhyme, and you know, so it's psychological thriller. It's not really supernatural, but I mean, a lot of people like both of those. Night of the Demons, 1988. Really good, cheesy 80 horror movie, but there's still some meat and bones there because this is these teenagers evolving. Night of the Demons is where they just want to go fuck around and, you know, summon demons and things like that. But at the same time, they you know, they confront their demons, and then they kind of personally evolve, except for a couple of the, you know, people who just refuse to grow up or whatever. Then they don't really make it to the end of the movie. But it's funny. I think there's probably boobs in it or whatever. So I mean, most of these 80s scary movies, there's a real emphasis on sexuality in 80s movies, scary movies. But I've always thought those kinds of things kind of go together in a weird way, because it is, you know, this existence is really still a big unknown. And, you know, that's why it kind of goes together, I guess, with the... Or they were just trying to sell, you know, movies to dudes. I'm not sure, you know, like, today, it's not really a thing. You're not like, I'm going to watch a scary movie and there's going to be boobs in it, but it's most of the time in these 80s movies where it's like a scary movie, it'll be like, you know, kids climb a tree house and then they use binoculars and they spy on the lady across the street. And in every single one, the window's completely open and whatever, and it's just like, there was another Dracula 80s movie I watched, same thing, where it was Dracula was watching from across the street. So I don't know what it is about 80s movies and boobs, but, you know, that's a thing. With horror movies, I think it just, now everything's too PC. The Monster Squad, 1987, really cool movie, and it's actually really funny, but it's all these different monsters, and they're actually going after the one monster, but they end up hanging out with these kids in a tree house, and as goofy as it sounds, it's actually really deep. People actually refer to this movie as the 80s Stranger Things, and it totally is. It's atmospheric, it's got all the different kids, and the character development is actually very rich. So you have a group of friends, one's kind of a jock, one's a nerd, and you know, the jock, he stands up for his nerdy friend, and they, you know, they really improve, all these friends improve each other, so it's really, it's like, yeah, it's like Stand By Me, Stranger Things kind of a feeling. The Heavenly Kid, 1985. This guy, he's, you know, drag racing, right, whatever, and he's, you know, racing against another guy, but the lever or whatever, because it's one of those stick shift things, it gets stuck, and he can't stop in time, and he drives his car off of a cliff, and you can see in the background his girlfriend's crying, and then, you know, at some point, he just he appears and he walks out of the forest, and he ends up hanging around the one kid who can see him, and they interact and all this stuff, and there's a really funny scene where he actually, the kid's like, why are you always floating all the time? And, you know, because he realizes other people can't see him and all this stuff, and he's like, I'm floating, man, because I'm smoking, you know, grass, and you want to smoke grass, and like, then he ended up giving this kid this lecture about don't do hard drugs. I mean, grass is okay, but you need to, you know, treat your mom right. You need, you know, grow up, because I'm dead and I'm stuck here and I don't understand and all this stuff. but now I have time to think about what's important. So it turns out that the girlfriend, this was this guy's ghost, and so when he drove his car off a cliff and died, his girlfriend was pregnant and had a son. And when his son came of age, he was getting picked on at school. That was the main feature of that, and this guy's spirit comes around, and he, through their talks, he helps his son have confidence. And when he is, when he really does evolve as a young man, then essentially he moves on, the dead guy, with the understanding that, hey, he had a kid. So it was such like a tear-jerking movie, and, but at the same time super funny. 80s, to the hilt. Like, I think they go and they have those milkshakes, and it's just a classic American night on the town, and I kind of like that, nostalgia. But basically, I'll go through a kind of a smaller list as I think of them. But most of Clive Barker's movies, Hellraiser, I think there's Hellraiser through 1 through 3. The first isn't my favorite, but they're all really good. The Lord of Illusion is really good because it's like this guy who tries to use magic, and even though there's little bits of it that are cheesy, it's really still a good movie. So anything by Clive Barker, if I'm on, browsing my streaming service, then 1 or 2 nights a week, I'm, going to be watching some of that. Then, the Chucky franchise, 1988 was the first one. The serial killer incarnates into this doll, and I think I've seen the first 3, and then I've seen like Chucky's Bride, and I can't really explain why I like it, because it is really gory, and there's not a whole richness in the plot, but there's just there's some kind of allure for me that I don't really understand with that one. The Blair Witch Project, 1999, that's where the people go out into the woods, and they slowly realize they become lost, and it shows them succumbing to their hallucinations. Essentially, I mean, you could think that it's paranormal, but there's that. A whole list of Stephen King movies. I've actually read probably all but the most recent few of his books. So maybe like the last 4 that he's ever written. But other than that, I have, why have I read all this stuff? I really didn't mention it before, or maybe I did. But I can read like a lot. I like to still go back and read the dictionary and medical textbooks and things like that, and I can just read really fast. Like when I was in college, I used to just read the material they give you, the textbooks, and I'd read the whole textbook in about 3 or 4 days. Sometimes it would be something like 2 or 3,000 pages if it was really an in-depth thing, and that I can just do that. So if I'm not in a super fast mood, I won't read that fast. But if it's something like Stephen King and I can blow through it a lot, even though it's really big, whatever, maybe a week. And so, but I love all of his stuff. I love all of the books. Such a different experience, The Shining book, compared to the movie, but I still like these American classics, really, that's what they are. Pet Sematary, 1989, and then Pet Sematary 2, which is honestly more humorous than anything else. Salem's Lot, I think that's in a 70s movie. Christine, Misery with Kathy Bates, Stand By Me, The Green Mile, so those aren't, but they're still Stephen King. The Silver Bullet, I think that's the one with Gary Busey in it, and the werewolf kind of stuff. But all those are really, a 1980 Stephen King book movie or book is a great night for me. So Sleepy Hollow, 1999. That's got Johnny Depp, Christopher Walken in it. And it's very cool because it's so spooky. There's some pretty, overt paganism, occult stuff, themes in it. I also like The Ninth Gate. That one's with Johnny Depp. I think that's also a 90s movie. Nightmare Before Christmas, 1993. Everybody's favorite. Okay, I fucking love it too. But that's just because I really kind of, when I look at Christmas trees or whatever, I'm just like, how could I make this spookier kind of a feeling? And so I really didn't see it till I was a little bit older. I was pretty young in 1993. Just not old enough to really care about like the themes, I guess, of a movie so much, just more absorbing things. And but then I saw it as an older child, and I just love it. I love the little dog. I think his name's Zero. The Ring, 2002. It's okay, but it's a people who watch a series of people who watch a cursed videotape, and they one by one succumb to the curse. And that's just the whole idea, is that people's enthrallment with curses. And then Pumpkinhead. I'm going to tell you guys what, though. This is my number one on the whole list. It's 1988. This is my favorite scary movie of all time. If you're like ready for like a serious though, like scary movie, you have to watch this if you haven't seen it. And if you've watched it, watch it again. This is incredibly atmospheric because it shows it's kind of got that changing of the seasons themes to it, where the seasons have that mind of their own, and so that's a big part of this. But it's just this kid dies accidentally, and part of the people involved, they want to fight the other party involved because it's like there was drinking and driving involved in this accident, and so they all start to fight each other. But then the father of the dead boy, he actually goes out and he goes to a Native American shaman woman, and he says, "I need to curse people." And she tells him, she sits him down, and she's like, "You know what? Let me tell you what curses are, boy." And she says, "You're bound to a curse. It's your choice what you're going to be attached to. And I want you to really think about what you want to do." And I can't exactly do it for you. I can just explain to you what is going to happen. I can do, some interactions with these objects. But then this is going to be all you. And you need to understand how powerful this is. This is going to change your life forever. And I'm telling you, you can stop now. You can walk away, because a curse is an attachment. And kind of that idea, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. Basically that's what she tells him in much cooler words than that. But he does it anyway, and he does this curse. And the people who are left alive, they slowly are evolving, becoming better humans. This guy says, "I'm going to go," I think the one guy, he's like, "I'm going to turn myself into the police and be honest about what happened." And he saves this one guy who he had been fighting earlier because Pumpkinhead is this creature that comes to kill them all. So he legit like saved his friend's life. Like he pushed him in the house at some point. And it shows all the blood and guts and the mutilation, and that's all there. But it's a slow burner into this insanity with this, and I really love it because it's pure. It's pure mentalness, and it's really focused on the seasons, the shadows of the mind. If you're into that at all, you have to watch it. Rosemary's Baby, that's a classic one. Sorry, my back actually itches. So yeah, that's a classic one where Rosemary's Baby is the Antichrist. Everybody gets freaked out about it because it's the 1960s. But it's still a very atmospheric build-up of a movie, and I still think it's very good. Final Destination, there's that series again of the movies, but the first one's my favorite. Like that death is this personified idea, and you know, if you survive a plane crash or whatever, but you were supposed to be on the plane, then death will come for you in some other way. And so that's what happens to these people. But just like when I was mentioning earlier with Identity, that is a modern rendition of Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians, where there's 10 people, and you know, they all get picked off one by one, but they can't figure out who is killing them, and it's a scenario where it can only be one of the 10 people. So they really try to search for intruders, they try to find logical explanations, but you know, there's a murderer among them, and they realize that, and there is no escape. There's no escape from death, and that kind of shares a theme with Final Destination. The Poltergeist franchise, I love all that. That's very classic haunted house, built on a cemetery and Native American grounds. And then the little girl who's an empath that channels this energy, and it gets so intense they actually called in that one lady who's pretty famous. She's like a midget and she's got a deep voice, but she's like a famous psychic. Those movies are all really good because they're so classic. It's like that classic idea of a scary movie from the 80s, like where you think of spooky cemeteries. What if your house is built on hallowed ground? It shows the classic phenomenon of children's toys going on and off by themselves, objects moving. So, and that's, essentially Poltergeist and all these movies, they're trying to really capture honestly, the psychological terror that for the most part is hauntings. It's the unexpected in your home, and I think that people get creeped out by just watching the Poltergeist. They would never want to live it. But if you just watch the movie, you can just feel that way for a minute. Children of the Corn, that's another Stephen King one. I threw that in there. The children of the town, they want to take over, and they start killing adults. And I love Stephen King, so Friday the 13th, that whole franchise, the Halloween franchise, Gremlins, I think that's also, franchise might be, what is it? Is it has to be 4 or more? I don't really know. I think it has to be several. But, Gremlins is 1, 2, 3. The first one comes out in 1984. The Fog, 1980, that's really good because that's the same lady from Halloween. And these guys die at sea, and their spirit becomes the fog that haunts all these people they feel is responsible for their deaths. And their deaths happen because of negligence. And so this is what this is, and people disappear one by one into the fog, and they're never to be seen again. Jeepers Creepers, 1, 2, maybe 3. That's a good one. That's maybe early 2000s. And that's kind of another element of this wicked scarecrow-looking nasty guy incarnate that is tied to the seasonal changes again, especially autumn. That, when everything dies in fall, death rises. And that is the incarnation of death, is that everything is dying. Everything that's not supposed to live through the winter dies. And it manifests in spiritual ways. It manifests in people seeing beings and shadows. because in some ways it is its own individual. It can be, but it can just as quickly become just an idea again. And those things really fluctuate. Subjective consciousness, egregore kind of ideas. Though things aren't as solid in the spiritual world or just one defined way. The Shining, 1980. I mean, everybody loves it. I definitely want to go to that one creepy hotel someday. Actually, my friend lives there, and she actually is having some paranormal problems, and if things don't improve, I'm going to have to find people out in her state to help her, because she approached it really casually, just like, hey, I'm getting bruises, and my husband and I were getting touched. I woke up, I had a hand mark on my face, and she's like, and I'm just, I'm not really that worried about it. I'm like, I am. That is not okay. But we've been, I've been talking to her and her husband. The reason that they're in a haunted place is because it's military housing, and I was able to kind of look into the situation, see that there had been a plane crash not too far from where they lived, civilian, because it was a lot of people, and some of the dead people, obviously, that didn't move on, wandered out of that wilderness area and into those kinds of places, and hers happens to be one of them. So, it's just really crazy to think about, but I try to help however I can. The Sixth Sense, 1999. I'm sorry, I'm just injecting random thoughts, but that's how I am. That's where the boy, he's like psychic, and he tries to tell his mom, and then he starts seeing a psychiatrist, but it turns out that the psychiatrist is really a ghost. And he is able to help the boy face some of his fears, and the little boy helps him move on. And it's a beautiful movie, and I don't care what anybody says. I love The Sixth Sense. So yeah, like I was mentioning, The Wicker Man, 1973. This is a good one because this is like actual group of pagan people that invited this film crew in, and I know that the movie's really weird at first, or you're like, what the heck does this have to do with paganism? But it becomes clear, and you can see that is the central theme. It's like they do the maypole dance, they sing the whole movie. There's it's all this stuff. They do fertility kinds of rites and jumping over a fire. And the guy is just kind of a douchebag the whole time. He is come to look for a missing girl who he thinks is among them, and she's not. And so he just keeps telling these people, have you never heard of Jesus and all this stuff? And they try to explain their pagan ways to him, but he doesn't want to have any of it. So, a big part of the movie is that this woman on the island, she keeps constantly trying to have sex with him, and he tells her, no, I'm engaged. I saved myself for marriage and Jesus. I think he even says that. But, so he just turns her down. But it turns out she was trying to do that to save his life, because the people really are dark. And when a harvest, after not a very successful harvest, like in ancient times, they'd sacrifice a person. So they get a hold of him, and you can imagine what the Wicker Man is about. The big effigy kind of looking deal, and they burn. They used to actually burn human beings in them, but you can't really impose morality on primal people. At least that's what I would say. It's not our time and place, and we just can take from it what we can learn, but not. A judgment really doesn't apply. There's a movie called Jack's Back I was watching recently. It was really good. I think it's an 80s movie. And it's like a guy who's a twin. And the one brother dies, and he keeps trying to undergo hypnosis to, recover the memories of who killed his brother, because he keeps having basically hallucinations. And there's a woman he kind of partners up with, but they're discussing things like that. And it turns out that these weird visions help him, save her life, because the serial killer was after her next, and then, he was able to correctly, after several, like, he even goes into the hypnosis guy's house, and he's like, do it one more time, I'm going to be able to, put me under one more time. And then that last time he gets this details, and then he's able to stop this guy from killing anybody else. Really, really good movie, though. I mean, very 80s, very 80s thriller kind of a movie, but at the same time, like I said, atmospheric. Phantasm, 1979. That's kind of a mind trip, if you will, because this is just this guy who spends a lot of time in a cemetery, and every time he goes into those mausoleums, and every time he turns a corner, he sees, I think it's like the groundskeeper guy, but then he'll look away and it's gone. So it's like, you can't really tell by watching the movie one time, like, what's supposed to be real and what's supposed to be this guy's imagination. But at the same time, the music, the atmosphere, this movie is great. And I learn something new every time I watch it. So, totally recommend. And then we have, I mentioned the Halloween franchise. I definitely didn't go over all the movies I like, but I just thought I'd throw a list out there. If you're just into, I probably covered the range of, half of them might have been psychological horror, and the others are just, Night of the Demons, I really just love this stuff all across the board. Scary movies. When I'm cooking and I'm constantly smelling herbs, and I guess my love of the occult and all things kind of scary, it really is my life, and I just put it in the correct section and way it belongs. But I'll watch a comedy once in a while, but I'm not gonna lie, like, I'll just tune that out. I don't really care. Like, this is what I like, and that's my interest. I am one of those people that I like the same over and over again. So I'm very particular, let's say. Like, I know what I like, and but I do challenge myself to be a little bit more open, as far as that kind of goes. Which is funny that I kind of be like that, but when I do necromancy, I'll open myself up in a way to being influenced by the deceased people. I think a lot of people advise against that, which I do unless you're pretty experienced. But I think that it's kind of hard to say. You have an interaction with somebody, you can't judge what is really, happening, or it might seem fleeting, but that person is still influencing you. Let's say they say something like some kind of vernacular, and then the next day you start saying it. It's just that's the way that we all kind of are, is we pick up on each other so much. I think it's really interesting. But at the same, so there, I'm very, open to that. But at the same time, I kind of am very particular, and I have my likes. And, it's almost like I should say I have my loves. And scary movies are one of them. So I'll talk to you guys later.